Hi my friends, today we are going to be reading The Ugly Vegetables by Grace Lin. Before we start, let's make sure we're ready. So let's get our thinking caps on. Let's tie them on nice and tight. Let's put on our listening ears. And let's get our quiet voice. Okay, I think we're ready now. The Ugly Vegetables. In the spring, I helped my mother start out our garden. We used tall shovels to turn the grass upside down, and I saw pink wiggly worms around. It was hard work. We stopped to rest, and we saw the neighbors starting their garden too. Hello, Irma, my mother called out to Mrs. Carmine. Mrs. Carmine was digging too. She was using a small shovel, one that fit in her hand. Mommy, I asked, why are we using such big shovels? Mrs. Carmine has a small one. Because our garden needs more digging, she said. I helped my mother plant the seeds, and we dragged the hose over to the garden. Hi, Linda. Hi, Mickey. I called to the Fitzgeralds. They were sprinkling water on their garden with green watering cans. Mommy, I asked, why are we using a hose? Linda and Mickey are using watering cans. Because our garden needs more water, she said. Then my mother drew funny pictures on a piece of paper. I stuck them into the garden. Hello, Roseanne, my mother called from across the street to Mrs. Angel Howe. Mommy, I asked, why are we sticking these pieces of paper in the garden? Mrs. Angel Howe has seeded packages in hers. Because our garden is going to grow Chinese vegetables, she told me. These are the names of vegetables in Chinese, so I can tell which plants are growing where. You see, Mrs. Angel Howe has these in her garden. She has sunflowers, poppies, peonies, and marigolds. But they're writing the names in Chinese. Do you see the Chinese symbols over here? Let's see what happens next. One day I saw our garden growing. Little green stems that looked like grass had popped out of the ground. Our garden is growing, I yelled. Our garden is growing. I rushed over to the neighbors to see if theirs had grown. Their plants looked like little leaves. Mommy, I asked, why do our plants look like grass? The neighbors looks different. Because they're growing flowers, she said. Why can't we grow flowers, I asked. These are better than flowers, I asked. What kind of vegetables do you think they're growing in her garden? She says hers look like little pieces of grass. So what kind of vegetables do you think might be in there? Soon all the neighbors' gardens were blooming. Up and down the street grew rainbows of flowers. The wind always smelled sweet. The butterflies and the bees were everywhere. Everyone's garden was beautiful, except ours. Wow, look at that. You see all these beautiful flowers. All their neighbors had them. But then she's a little upset because hers are just green and they're just leaves. But everybody has beautiful flowers around them. Our garden was dark green and ugly. Why didn't we grow flowers? I asked Mommy again. These are better than flowers, Mommy said. I looked, but I only saw black, purple, green vines, fuzzy wrinkled leaves, and prickly stems, and a few little yellow flowers. I don't think so, I said. You wait and see, Mommy said. Before long, our vegetables grew. Some were big and lumpy, some were thin and green and covered with bumps. These were just plain, icky yellow. They were ugly vegetables. Sometimes I go over to the neighbors and look at their pretty gardens. They would show me the poppies, the peonies, and the petunias to me, and I would feel sad that our garden isn't as nice. Wow, do you see a difference between their garden, the neighbor's garden, and her garden? One day, my mother and I picked the vegetables from the garden. We filled the whole wheelbarrow of them. We took them to the kitchen. My mother washed them and took a big knife and started to chop them. Ay-yow! Ay-yow, she said to cut them. She had to use her muscles. These vegetables were tough and hard. This is shaozanga, Mommy said, handing me a bumpy curled vegetable. She pointed to the other vegetables. This is shenzai, and this one is tanghao. I went outside to play. While I was playing catch with Mickey, a magical aroma filled the air. I saw the neighbors standing on their porches with their eyes closed, smelling the sky. They took deep breaths of air like they were trying to eat the smell. Ooh, so she was just standing out with the rest of her neighbors and they were going, smelling that sweet smell in the air. Let's see what that is. The wind carried it up and down the street. Even the bees and the butterflies seemed to smell the scent in the breeze. I smelled it too. It made me hungry. And it was coming from my house. When I followed the smell to my house, my mother was putting a bowl of soup on the table. The soup was yellow, red, green, and pink. This is a special soup, Mommy said, and she smiled. She gave me a small bowl full of it. I tasted it. It was so good. The flavors of the soup seemed to dance in my mouth and laugh all around my stomach. I smiled. Do you like it? Mommy asked. I nodded and handed my bowl out for some more. It's made from our vegetables in the garden, she told me. The doorbell rang and we ran to open the door. Ooh, so these vegetables were in the garden and Mommy cooked them up and made a special soup. Who do you think is at the door? Let's see. All of our neighbors were standing on the door holding flowers. We noticed you were cooking, said Mrs. Fitzgerald, laughed as she handed out his flowers. We thought maybe you might be interested in a trade. We laughed too. Me and my mother gave them each their own bowl of her special soup. My mother told them what each vegetable was and how she grew it. She gave them the soup recipe and put some soup in jars for them to take home. I ate 5 bowls of soup. It was the best dinner ever. Well, you see that all the neighbors came. They were all enjoying the mommy's special soup. Makes me want to try the soup. The next spring, when my mother was starting her garden, we planted some flowers next to the Chinese vegetables. Mrs. Carmine, the Fitzgeralds, and the Angel House planted some Chinese vegetables next to their flowers. Soon, the whole neighborhood was growing Chinese vegetables in their gardens. Up and down the street, little green plants poked out of the ground. Some looked like leaves, and some looked like grass. And when the flowers started blooming, you could smell the soup in the air. Oh, the end. Wow, that was such a great book. What did you think about it?